Me too. Are you okay? Am I live right now? It says you're live.
Is it working now? Yay!
Oh!
That was so much more difficult than it needed to be. It was like, test your camera, and then I tested it, and it said it was working, but then it wouldn't let me join. So
Yeah,
we
then it
figured it
asked
out.
15 times, like, enable your camera. I was like, yes! Enable! 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 My God.
Just yelling at it like, go! Just I have acute memories of like stalling cars while trying to drive like stick and just being like, go, just go, like panicking in traffic. So we figured it out though.
Oh my God. Awesome. Wow. Well, I'm glad you made it. Hello. Nice to see you.
It's so nice to see you too.
Yeah. Yeah, well, before we get started, I guess I'll introduce myself. My name is Samantha Zessi, part of the Next Gen Men Podnet podcast network. Hello,
The
everybody.
the amazing podcast network. You guys do
That's
such a good
correct.
job. Well, you all. I'm trying to strike guys from my vocabulary, and it's been a
Same.
struggle.
It's
Oh,
been
it's
very hard for me
a
as well.
ah. You all are great. Yeah, thanks for hosting today. This is going to be awesome. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I'm Veronica. I'm the community manager for Next Gen Men. And yeah, super stoked to be back again.
Yes, it's been the last time was really fun, so I'm excited to chop it up today. Also, put in a cool little plug for Masculinity podcast that will return this summer, which I also am a producer and co-host of. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later this month. But until then, Veronica, what have you been thinking about this week? What's on your mind?
Yeah, well, I really love that one of the suggestions from you and Herman around like topics for the week was around dating because I'm sitting here and I'm like, this is not something I think about that much. And then having
Mm.
to dive into it, I was like, oh man, there's so much here. So I think that one's going to be really interesting. And I've been thinking about it this week, but not as much as I should have in preparation.
Oh, well, I mean, hey, I feel like dating advice always finds its way to my timeline. So I'm excited to hear, to compare notes on if any, on what, if anything, has come across yours. Because the social medias have been going kind of wild when it comes to that. But yeah, I mean, what I'm thinking about in particular is the NBA Finals. The Suns and the Bucks are playing today, probably in a few minutes, actually. So we're excited to be, trying to take down patriarchy with y'all instead, though. So we'll be focusing on that. But yeah, before we get started, we have a few shout outs to make for our Next Gen Men members. So I will go ahead and do that. I know your actually maybe as a community manager, that's something that you like to do, or I don't know. I mean, I'm happy to shout the folks out.
Yeah,
Um,
sure. No, that would be great. I'm happy to do that. So yeah, we are so lucky to have members. Oh, that one always messes me up. It always trips me up. But members who support our work, which is like so essential to us being able to do what we do. So we're shouting out 5 people this week. I'm hopefully I will get all the pronunciation correct. But first is Brian Helfenbaum, and next is Crystal Schuckberg, Toby Spagnolo. I hope I said that properly. Marianne Kerr and Mandy Sherman. And I know both of those women who've been supporting Next Gen Men in a variety of ways, no less as, board members and committee members for the past few years. So that's amazing to see. Yeah, I mean, without their support, obviously we would not. We would just wouldn't be able to do what we do, and they support in so many ways in terms of like spreading the message and sharing our events and our programs with other people. So it's just like, it's incredible. If folks want to also become members, they can do that at nextgenmen.ca/join.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for those shout outs, and thank y'all for, supporting the good work there. I mean, as we ascend into these topics, you'll understand why Next Gen Men's work is so important and why it's important to start very, very early. So, so we have quite a few things to kind of talk about today. I think that when we first started talking about this, we had like kind of this whole thread of like moving through intergenerationally, but there was a topic that came up that felt just like so intense, and because of that, it was so important that we talk about it. And I don't know if everybody's seen this, but have y'all seen the movie I Care a Lot? It's on Netflix. It's wild. It's intense. It brings up there's so many things to say about this movie, which I love that you brought up girl boss culture, because my mind was like capitalism. But I guess in a way it's becoming one and the same.
Oh yeah. So related. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those of y'all who have not seen I Care a Lot, it's actually a pretty scary premise. Essentially, it's about this this company that repossesses like older people's property by essentially having a hook with some doctor who essentially writes a note letting the judge know that these people are no longer able to care for themselves because they've had like one kind of like 2-minute episode of like slight dementia, or something on their brain scan has shown, something. So basically you're kicking it at your house, you're having breakfast. This happens in the movie. Somebody is having breakfast or like swimming, and there's a knock at your door, and somebody comes and is like, oh, there's a court order saying that I'm taking you now to this home and repossessing all your shit. We're taking all your shit. It now belongs to the state, and I am your conservator, and which is a hot topic right now. I'm your conservator, and I will be taking care of this, of these assets. Like, your family can't do anything about it. Your husband, your wife, your, non-binary significant other can't do anything about it. This person comes to your house, and they're now in charge of literally everything that you own, everything that you've worked for. Whether or not you work for it, doesn't matter. They now own it. So
yeah, everything that you do, right? You can't go anywhere without their consent. You can't, do anything medically without their consent. You can't do anything. And yeah, you're right. Definitely a hot topic right now with Free Britney. So yeah.
And so, I guess like there are a number of threads here, but the way that the style of the movie is very much like, so the woman who plays, I forget the name of the main character in the movie.
Marla.
But it's played by Rosamund Pike, and she is this kind of like this boss, right? She's wearing high power suits all the time. She drives these badass cars. They're seizing properties all over the place. So they have like all these different properties that they could just stay at. So it's just like kind of like this luxury vacation lifestyle, and it's all legal.
Yeah.
It's all legal.
Yep. It's horrifying. Yeah, the whole time you're kind of sitting there like, oh my God. At least I was when I was watching it. I was like, oh, but I was also taking so many notes because I was like, this is really interesting. There's a lot to unpack. And probably one of the first things I noticed was just like the way I guess her character embodies so many of these traits that we've like, I don't want to say traditionally, but under patriarchy we associate with masculinity, right? Like she is, ruthless. She's smart. She's ambitious. She's tough. She doesn't give up. She has this like total lack of fear. Like
Yes.
even when she's being threatened, she's like totally like, she could die. And there's a scene. Sorry, spoiler alert. But like, there's a scene where
Spoilers.
she could die, and she's like calm. She's trying to like actually bargain her way out of it by being like, if you pay me, I'll go away. And it was like, I can't believe like that's right. You're like, holy shit, no fear.
It's it was tough because it's like when I watched that scene, I was like, I mean, not for nothing, but like it was like I wasn't impressed because it was so repulsive, like the way we got there. But at the same time, I mean, it was I really respected it. I really respected it. I was like, this person's never gonna let up. She's never gonna let it go. Like she's always gonna go for it. And in a weird way, I respected it. And I feel like I think that that's kind of like the thread here, right? Where it's like
Right.
so cringeworthy, it's so excessively immoral,
Yeah.
but you're like, okay, I mean, she's doing it, it's legal, and she's going for it. And she's with this like gorgeous lady who's like her partner in crime, and also her her partner in legal crime, that is the business, and in life. And it's like, also spoiler,
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, and it's kind of like, if you're not careful, you kind of like forget like what,
That she's awful.
like she's like an awful person, but she's backed, right? And I feel like the point about the culture piece, I think, is a big deal because she's
Yeah.
back, like this is all legal.
And isn't it also like those are kind of traits we're taught to admire, right? Not only because of masculinity, right? Like we look to those qualities as like leadership qualities, but also because under capitalism, that's seen as like good hustle. So we're sort of like, yeah, we admire it, and then we like hate ourselves for admiring it. And I think they did a great job of that in the movie because
Yeah.
we're like, yeah, I should not admire that. Maybe that leads us to question some other things, right? Like, what do we value in other people? And so I thought they did a brilliant job with that. And like, and it really does reflect that the lean in advice, right? That started girl boss culture. Be more like men and you'll succeed.
Oh,
Like 100%. Like
yeah.
they like, I guess she's literally like the caricature of girl boss in the same way that like Trump is like a caricature of like masculinity off the rails and like horrible like right wing not good, but like they're similarly very much like caricatures of those things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think like, I mean, one of the things with the movie that was, because I mean, the whole time you were watching, I was watching it, and I was like, "There's got to be justice. There's got to be justice. There's got to be justice." But I think that one of the things that was very striking was that it was such a big question whether or not she would actually see justice. Like,
Yeah.
she could just go on to do this, and I feel like, what we prize in our culture is this kind of like fearless, I mean, as you were saying, right? But it's like, one of the things that's really striking about it is she talks a lot about how she's been threatened by men her whole life, and that how they're mostly bark and no bite, and how she's only been bit by two people, and those are good odds for her. And that is so, I feel like that's such a, it's like brave, but it's toxic. It's super toxic. It's like,
Because she doesn't care.
she doesn't care. She doesn't care about anyone, about anything, but literally her company. And I think that is revered. That's what allows her to get to the top. Once she actually makes it, like she's the caretaker or whatever the headline was on the magazine or whatever. It's like she's revered as somebody who actually cares for people. And it's like, I thought it was a really nice kind of behind the veil of what like CEO life is like, where you have somebody who has this huge mission, and they're supposedly doing all these things to help people, but then when you look behind the veil, it's actually just, I mean, it's unworkable. Like the way that they function is unworkable. The way that they do things is like, the way that they move and the way that they acquire is unworkable. And yet here we are. And actually, I mean, if we know about CEOs that, they're like, I think that the highest like percentage of like narcissistic personalities are within like CEOs and stuff like that. So I feel like yeah, I mean, in terms of, we on masculinity, actually, we had a whole kind of like conversation around like workplace culture and,
Mm.
the way that people, yeah, just like create capital for themselves and kind of what's expected out of that, right? And it's
Yeah.
kind of like a nonstop game, which we saw definitely reflected in this movie, and saw how this woman was just, yeah, being acting like a man, like beating
Yeah.
them at their own game, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think they did it such a good job of pulling out, um, like when it comes to like capitalism, if you're winning the money game, you're really losing the people game. Like you're kind of giving up humanity in pursuit of profit typically, and like that's, you totally see that here, and hence like the irony of the title, like you pointed out, like I care a lot, when in fact she cares not at all.
That's right.
Not even a little bit about anyone else, right? But I guess the title makes sense if I care a lot is supposed to mean I care a lot about myself or like my own success, right? Like I care a lot about money. And I thought, I just thought that was like brilliant, the way that they really showed that. And it's sort of like I see the parallel between like Wolf of Wall Street and this one in terms of the like pushing everyone away in order to achieve that, and like kind of ruining your life in the process.
Yeah, actually, I haven't seen Wolf of Wall Street, but I can imagine.
Yeah, he basically like, relationships with all sorts of people just fall apart because he's like so single-mindedly focused on like that success money wise, right? And like, his two ex-wives are just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, what are we
Right?
doing
And
here?
exactly. I think one of the other things that was interesting that I really appreciated that they did in the film was to show how we're all pretty complicit in the harms of capitalism. I thought they did a good job of that, like showing like complicity at all those different levels, like with the continuing care homes and their directors and their staff and their doctors, or just doctors in general, and her staff, which knew exactly what she was doing, and like it sort of just showed like people in the courts, like everybody had, they were complicit, and then just they took even that one further step back and showed people in like the stock market who make money off these companies, right? Like you
Yeah,
are essentially like funding this problem.
yeah,
I thought that was really interesting too.
yeah. It is great. I mean, it really just points to like, yeah, none of this is possible without systems, right? It's like it's been systematized from the get. I mean, we're seeing it right now with Britney. Like, it really felt like she was gonna get out, and she is not out. Like, she is still being, it's a little bit intense because, here we have a perfect example of how, patriarchy thrives. And actually what this reminds me of, have you heard of The Wing?
No.
Maybe not. I mean, it's pretty particular to the U.S. So why would you have heard of it? But it's essentially it's a co-working company that was founded by this kind of girl boss, Audrey Gelman, who she's really high profile. Like immediately it became very, very, it was kind of like the answer to like WeWork, because WeWork apparently was like a very like masculine culture. So you like walk into the wing and it's like beautiful plush couches, like dusty pinks, and you've got all these like celebrity women that are coming and having parties there and stuff. And then when you look under the veil of that, what ended up happening with the wing was that she actually had to, I believe she had to resign as CEO, or like relieve herself of some of her duties, kind of because of something like that, where looking under the veil, it was like everybody that was high profile and all the members that were coming in there were being treated amazingly, but then the people that were working there were like all like younger women of color, and they were being like, they just weren't being respected, they weren't being paid adequately, their working conditions were really awful. So it's like, and she kind of boasted herself as like a place where women are welcome, all women are welcome, doesn't matter, kind of like there's like a scholarship program to like get into like this really fancy, working space and stuff. And when you get in there, you find that it's actually just a lot of girl bosses, a lot of women bosses, if you will, who don't really care about bringing people along. They just want to take advantage of the capitalist system like everybody else does. And by everybody else, I do mean men, people. Powerful men who have been in C-suites since the beginning of C-suites. So,
Yep.
yeah.
The actually, now that you mention it and you explained the wing a little bit more, I think it was in the article that Herman shared a while ago that was so good from Vox, the one on girl bosses. I think it was called Gaslight, Gatekeep, Girlboss. And it was
Ooh.
exploring kind of the
Oh my
rise and
gosh.
fall of
Mm-hmm.
Girlboss. And there was a quote from there that was basically like, um, the girl boss brought to life a way to talk about real concerns and barriers in the system honestly and frankly. It also positioned the solution so blazingly simple, put women in charge, that it could never work. We wanted it to be this easy to buck the whole system, but when it turned out that women CEOs were just CEOs, we never let them forget it. And I was like, because it's so true. Like, it just makes me think of, like, similarly, you know, if you wanted to put a woman at the head of the military, is it still not an organization designed to kill people? You know
That's
what I
right.
mean? And so, like, to me, that's sort of similar. It's like, I don't really want more female CEOs as much as I just want, like, no CEOs. I'm like, is that bad? I don't know if that makes me like,
Uh,
I don't know.
yeah. Well, I mean, and the thing, I mean, I keep on thinking about this because I'm like, okay, is there a way that we can use the language that we currently have, right? Like these structures that we currently have and actually transform them? You know, like when you think about a CEO and you think about a chief executive officer, a chief operating officer, a chief financial officer, is there any way that that's ever going to be a position in which that person is not a chief dominating over people?
Right,
Ever. You know,
right.
like, is it possible to imagine a way in which you can have that type of leadership and kind of retain the nomenclature or even some of the structure and just make people nicer? No, it's a system. It's been created to function in a particular way. Systems work as they are designed.
Right.
I venture to say that there aren't very many systems that are broken. They're not. They're functioning the way that they were designed to function. So, which actually, I feel like this might be a good segue for the our next conversation about defending abusers. Just to
Yeah.
keep it light. Just to keep it very light.
Just to keep on the very positive train. But yeah, you're right. I think it's a perfect transition. So
Yeah.
yeah, who did you want to talk about
So,
first?
well, I mean, so I think that the big thing on my mind, and on a lot of people's minds is Bill Cosby, which since we started talking about having this conversation today, Bill Cosby has been, I mean, of course, he's already been, he's out of jail and all of that. But since then, his agent has been like shopping him around to a bunch of comedy clubs, and
Oh,
everybody is like supposedly anticipating the return of Bill Cosby. And
wow.
honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he had a hit because there are a lot of folks who are defending Bill Cosby. Lots and lots and lots of folks. A lot of people who found out when they found out that he was. So I mean, I don't think that there's any way that anyone out there would not know what's going on about this if you're like in the U.S. or Canada. But just in case, Bill Cosby was released because of what people have been calling a technicality, but essentially it was like his testimony was supposed to be, it was used years ago as a bargain in his to so that he could be tried within a civil case, and so his testimony could never be used against him criminally. And I guess because the trial a couple years ago that landed him in jail did that by going against this kind of bargain that he had struck with this guy, this judge, in 2004. A judge reviewed it like last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, and was like, actually, you have violated Mr. Cosby's rights by actually proceeding with this criminal trial. And so the only thing that we can do to right this is set him free.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's that's what it is. But then you get there, and then you've got good old Claire Huxtable, Felicia Rashad, who tweets out, "Hey, so glad that a wrong was righted," or some shit like that. And it kind of sent the fireworks off. She just became dean at Howard. You know what I mean? Which is like, I mean, we already know the way that college campuses treat victims and survivors of sexual assault. So like, another thing in terms of like, kind of it's not a girl boss per se, but it's a little bit like that. it feels like it's still like a boss lady type figure, an elder, someone that the community respects, that's not occupying this position, that instead of having the kind of representation, inclusion, and diversity contributing to some sort, even like a minute like system shift, it actually just reinforces it because we know where she stands.
Right. Yep. That's that makes sense and is horrible and makes me very sad. I was like, I wanted to say I was surprised when it was like Bill Cosby released, but then I was like, of course, like, of course. Like, I don't know, like, why would I expect anything else? Like, so wild though.
Well, the thing that was a little tough to kind of swallow as well. I mean, given the way that things have gone the past couple of years in the country, like people don't care about facts, they don't care about like actual situations and like what actually happened. So there were like so many people who thought he had gotten out because they found him innocent, and it's like that's not what happened. Actually, you have a rapist walking on the streets, a rapist who 60 plus women have said like drug them, rape them, like whatever. Like we know this to be a factual thing, and that person is now out on the street and potentially going to be at the comedy. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to talk shit about the comedy cellar. I don't know what the comedy cellar is doing, but like at comedy clubs around the nation, potentially around the world, and he's being backed, you know? Like Felicia Rashad's not the only person who's saying that. People back Felicia Rashad. Stephanie Mills, who's like a very, you know, kind of a big, a very popular singer from the 70s, backed her up. Naturi Houghton, who is a big kind of like contemporary, very young actress, backed her up. So it's, you know, you've got people who you're like, I feel like you should know better.
Right.
I feel like you should be somebody who uses your platform to just be better. And you're not, because you're a person, and, you know, hey.
Yeah. I'm so curious, like, why do they side with it? Like, do they just not want to believe it? Are they just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know why. I mean, like, do they stand to lose something? Like, Buddy had a pretty big fall from grace. I don't know if you stand to gain much. Like, I don't know. It's so weird. I'm like, why put, because, I mean, she's putting her career as a dean very much on the line, you would think, right? By doing that, it's just like, how do you, why? Why are you doing that?
That's a good question. I mean, it's like, I'm like, okay, is it like a personal relationship with Cosby that has you be like, no, I need to be like loud and proud about this? Or is it like, is he paying you behind closed doors? Like, please endorse me, scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Is it, you know, something like that? I mean, my inkling about it is just, you know, it. I don't want to say that it's purely generational, although I do feel like there is a bit of that going on. You know, like
victim blaming being more entrenched in like older generations.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you know, you look at aunties and you look at like great aunties and like grandmas and stuff. And like, there are a lot of people who are like in that crowd, or at least, you know, that I've come across or like have heard of, that are supporting it and being like, you know what, like this is, you know, Dr. Hustable, and like, you know, he changed our lives forever and made it, you know, made it palatable and like awesome for like, you know, upper middle class families to be on TV, and like how awesome that is and all of that. And I'm like, both can be true. I don't know if we have to pretend like because this happened, which is 100% true. And I watched the Cosby Show as soon as I was able. So like I was really into it myself, but it's like I don't think that we can pretend like he didn't full on rape 60 women, wasn't full on convicted for it, and then was released re-emphasizing that he was not actually like, or I guess cleared of these charges, and then and act like it's okay for me to like go and like pay, you know, $75 to go watch him in some comedy club.
So absurd, right? Like such a weird thought, thinking of like going to see him or something. You're like, how do you like? Yeah, I don't know how folks like really reconcile. Like even if he wasn't like found guilty on all these like numerous charges, how you'd even reconcile that? Like, I don't know. It's such a mystery.
Well, my thing is also like I mean, I kind of getting into like more of like the abusers getting defended. It's like it's a weird thing. I'm like, okay, are we talking about stocks? maybe not particularly in the case of Cosby, but are we talking about Stockholm syndrome here, which is very real, by the way. I've had it, so I'm not going, but it's like, are we talking about Stockholm syndrome? Are we talking about just like a purely generational thing? Are we just talking about full on misogyny, like like calculated misogyny, uncalculated misogyny? We're talking about misogyny. We see this a lot. Misogyny from women who hate other women, or who are displeased with other women, or whatever. We're trying to undercut other women. We see this a lot, right?
That's
and
true.
I feel, yeah, like I'm like, when we talk about abusers always getting defended, I mean, I hate to say it, but when I was thinking about this, or when we were thinking about this, like the first thing that came to mind was how men are getting defended by women. That's what came up to me. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, even like defended in the legal sense by women, right? Like there's like the trial that I linked for the Canadian example when we were thinking about it was Gian Gomeshi's trial, which was really big in Canada. And his lawyer, his defense lawyer, was a woman. And it's just like, I don't know, like how do you do that? Like, I don't know. Still, there's like, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about how law works.
yeah, I mean, actually, if you wouldn't mind, I would love to hear a little bit more about like what exactly is going on with that, and like what,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of an older case, but it was such a high profile one that it's definitely like the first one that came to mind when I was thinking of like, examples from Canada about like, folks who've been, accused of sexual assault getting defended. This is just like probably one of our bigger Me Too stories. So like, yeah, Gian Gameshi was a CBC radio host, and he was definitely like a popular one in Canada, and he used to be seen as like this really progressive guy, which of course adds this other layer, which I think we're going to talk about. That's like kind of related to some of the other stuff we were going to talk about today too. Yeah, so he lost his job over the allegations, but the courts found him not guilty, and it was only I think 3 charges that he was like actually tried for, but as many as 20 women came forward with stories about him either harassing them, assaulting them, or sexually assaulting them. And yeah, he pled not guilty, and he was found not guilty. The trial, it was in like 2016 that this happened, and yeah, he was acquitted on all the charges. And yeah, it was a big story for us, and unfortunately it seemed like it would have a really bad effect on just like sexual assault in Canada and like how it is dealt with, because like a lot of people post trial were like, the op-eds were just like, wow, this is really going to discourage women from coming forward in the future, or I shouldn't say just women, but anyone who's been sexually assaulted from coming forward. Like that's just the end result of that. So yeah.
Which is exactly what people said about Cosby. It's like, okay, so say something after a while, don't say something after a while. Either way, you're fucked. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And it's like, I feel like there's like there's like kind of like a situation going on where we're pretending a lot less, right? Like politically, legally, that we give a shit about people. We're a little like, oh, we'll gloss it over a little bit, but we all really know what's going on here. I feel like we were like a lot more like diligent about our lives before, and now it's kind of like, actually, we know he's a rapist, but hey, there's no way. We have precedent law in this country, and that precedes, or like that trumps any kind of like why the law actually exists, which is to prevent crimes, and which is to like bring justice to like people who were just like hurt.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think there's so much conversation that's been happening for at least the last decade about just how the like justice system is just really not set up for sexual assault at all, like to deal with it at all, and how little justice there really is within it. And like, yeah, I hope that there will be different ways to deal with it in the future, because honestly, like, yeah, the way that like folks who are accused like deal with it is to like attack the credibility of the folks accusing them, and then it just becomes this like pile-on of like, well, what do you remember, and how accurate are your facts, and like all this stuff, and you're like, nobody remembers like what hairstyle they had the night they were assaulted. Like nobody's gonna remember that. They're gonna remember getting assaulted. Like, so it's just wildly not set up to deal with the effects at all. And then what happens for people who like survivors? Like nothing happens for them.
No, yeah. And
It
it's,
sucks.
yeah, it's, well, it sucks. And it's like, unfortunately, it's just so cultural. Like, I just, there's no way that we wouldn't come to this outcome because everything that we have set up this far leads us exactly here. There's no way. I mean, we're in 2021. We've been talking about consent. People think consent is a new conversation. It's not. People think that feminism is a new conversation. It's definitely not. People think that the word patriarchy has just emerged from the bushes. It hasn't. We've been talking about this shit for decades. We've been talking about it since long before you and I were born. And every time we keep on acting like this is a brand new concept. And it's like, I'm a little kind of interested to kind of get where that is. But I mean, besides kind of understanding the level of messaging that goes into upholding patriarchal systems and patriarchy in general, that goes into kind of having a system in that clearly champions very particular characteristics of people, right? Masculine characteristics, which I'll say, unhealthily, like the unhealthy kind of like masculinity or whatever that we talk about, right? Like those things are pushed forward at the forefront as the things that everybody should inhabit. And what that looks like is when somebody who inhabits those qualities does wrong, we protect them.
Yeah.
Because whoever they did that to is undesirable, they have less value, they're just not as important. Even though community makes the world go round, actually, since we're human beings and that's how we actually function, like the championing of the individualistic mindset of upholding somebody like a CEO or upholding somebody like a all-powerful leader is what kind of that's what we do that even though it's against our nature.
Right.
I mean, it's not against our nature of fear, but it's against our nature. Sorry, go ahead.
No, all good. No, you definitely made me think immediately of Brock Turner's case as well. Because I was just like, oh, protecting somebody. Holy shit, that's like the epitome of being like, you did this awful thing, you got caught, it was like a awful thing, and yet the whole system's like, oh, his athletic career, right? And it's so reminiscent of so many other cases that are the same, like the exact same thing. Like, what was that famous case in 2013 in like small town Steubenville, right? Steubenville, Ohio had that case where these guys on the football team sexually assaulted one of their classmates, a girl who's like 16, and the boys were charged and convicted. They didn't serve a long time because they were youth still, but like there was like outcry in this town. Like they were outraged that these young stars had their careers ruined, and I was like, man, like you live in a town where this kind of stuff happens, like probably a lot. Like, if it's happening to one girl, it's happening to other girls, and yet you're like so sad for these boys. And like, I don't know, like I want to have empathy for all people, but I'm also just like, why is there not empathy for this girl? Like, why? Like the whole town was outraged. There were like radio announcers talking about it, people talking about how she was horrible and just wanted attention or whatever. It's like no one wants that kind of attention. She got death threats, she got everything. Like it was just like so disgusting.
Got assaulted.
Right, like, she got assaulted, and then after that, she had still stuff, like, it was nonstop, right? Like, death threats from people in her community that should have been supporting her, like, trying to heal, and this girl had to, like, basically go underground and get a new identity and, like, move cities. Like, and, like, that's the story that's repeated itself across many, many places, including in Canada. We have a few really famous cases, too, where young women were assaulted, and then the men were not, or the young men involved were not charged or were not really held accountable, and these young women faced a lot of bullying and then died by suicide. Like, we have two very famous cases in Canada of that, and it was just like, why? Anyway, sorry, I went like way off the rails, I mean, but
it's totally on brand. On brand. Sorry, I need to stop saying that. Always not. No, I mean it fits, right? It's fitting, and I feel like the seismic shift that's like needed in order to kind of like have a tipping point of understanding masculinity, femininity, all the itties as kind of like equally valued energies that people possess or identities, whatever, however people, whatever fits, like is intense. And I feel, I mean, we can, I think that one of the things that, eventually at some point might be helpful with that is just continuing to develop this like culture of both and. You can have compassion and accountability.
Yeah.
You can say like, oh, these are 16-year-old dudes. Cosby was in the 70s. Everybody was out here. I forget what the drug is called. That I've read about that drug, by the way. Wild. But yeah, like whatever drug, everybody was like passing those around like candy. Everybody was like partying, whatever. Like there's something to be said for like being in a different era. We have evolved in like socially to a certain extent. I mean, we say things differently a little bit. We have, a little bit Gen Z, hopefully. But like things have changed a little bit, but I'm just like, I'm like, okay, we by and large are continuing to function in this situation of like, you're wrong, I'm right. And fine. But also, like, you can be wrong and right at the same time. Like, you can, I mean, I wouldn't say maybe wrong and right is not the way to say it. Just like.
But like, two things can be true at once.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Quite simply.
And it's like our again, justice system not set up for that at all, right? There has to be a winner and a loser, right?
Absolutely.
And like, yeah, that's not probably gonna work for like things like this. Like, it's just not gonna work. And it pits people against each other quite literally, right? Like, there's a defense and a opposition almost, right? So that it's set up that way. And it's same with our politics. It's exactly set up that way too, right? Like, it's set up to be like, here's the governing party and the opposition. And they have to fight always. It has to be a fight. And I'm like, okay. Like, we're always going to be set up for this, apparently. It has to be one way or the other and not necessarily like, okay, both things are true. Okay, what can we actually work together on? Okay, like, anyway, I went off on a little bit of an aside for that, but.
Well, no, I mean, I feel like I want to piggyback on that because I feel like kind of going back to like the girl boss culture or whatever, that's essentially just, capitalism. It's like if we actually were to have, a shift in the energy, so to speak, of leadership, right? Like there could actually be a difference. Like we know that, companies that are run by women that actually aren't following traditional modes of like patriarchal like leadership styles, like in executive functions function better. All that startup culture works better under kind of like a more of a collaborative, like, less top down type of structure. Like we know for a fact that that's true. So it's like, if we know that, I mean, what happens is then we have to kind of be able to see if we can let go of that patriarchal ego that we've developed for the past thousands of years. You know what I'm saying? And then we can potentially have a conversation. But otherwise, I'm afraid we're stuck. No matter who wears the hat, it's the same hat.
Head of the military. Hat. Still kills people.
It's the same military.
Yeah. And that's where I think like ideas that have so much promise are things like co-ops. And I'm in love with the idea of co-ops because it's like collective ownership of a company by the people in it. And I'm like, that's so cool because that already messes with the very top down kind of thing, right? Like it messes with that because all of a sudden everybody's an owner. Everybody is like, a shareholder in that company that works there. And it becomes very different. And even things like, I can't remember which country. I want to say it's Norway, but I could mess that up. They have a thing where their union members are on the boards of their companies. There's always union representation on their boards. Yeah. It's considered totally normal and good and productive to have those people working together. And I'm like, imagine that. Like, the employees are shareholders. They have a say. They should have a voice, right? I thought, and again, it's sort of messing with that adversarial thing because it's usually unions against owners, right? Exactly. But instead, they're both. They're both union members and owners.
That's brilliant.
Why not?
Yeah. And I feel like Norway is always like in the top 10 happiest countries in the world, by the way. So I feel like they could teach us a little something about that.
Lots that is, paid for by taxes, and people are like, yeah, this is great. I think we should do this. Also, imagine that. Systems that work. Magic.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, I have a piggyback question to that, but I feel like I want to talk to you about that offline because the Norway thing, I'm like,
there's always weird stuff too. There's stuff that like even like the Nordic countries are like real bad for their immigration policies and stuff. They tend to be very like get out other people, and I'm like why did you have to go and make it work? Like you were doing great, and then you were like goodbye other people.
Well, it's interesting because it's like, yeah, I'm like, can this only happen in homogenous societies? And if that's the case, where the hell does that leave us? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's like, I mean, we're not living in homogenous societies. So how can we, in our North American kind of like bubble, arrive to something that begins to massage that into its culture, into kind of like its, like I don't even know if that, you know what? No, we're staying positive. It's possible. It's small changes, people moving the needle every day, like there are activists out there. There are a lot of people who are putting in the good work, and a lot of things have been toppled in the past that they didn't think was possible either. And here we
Yeah.
are. So,
Well, even
yeah.
like returning to your roots, like Industrial Workers of the World is one of the biggest unions that was like born in the States, and it was multiracial from the start. And that was in like 19 whatever, like early, like so early, like 1905, like before people had ever like think that were like. I think it was actually even earlier than that. So it's like there were like multiracial, multi-class movements. They were not perfect at all by any means, but they existed, and we could do it again.
We
Like
can do it
we
again.
can.
We can.
We have to believe it, right?
Yeah, we
That's what I
do.
keep telling myself. It's like you have to believe that it's possible, or else what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm like, are we feeling ready to talk about relationship advice? I feel like we
Yeah.
are we're teetering there. Um
Yes, absolutely. We can go there.
I so I feel like the reason why that comes up is like, okay, so we're talking about togetherness and like how we can get there eventually and how it'll be awesome. And I think that one of the things, so like this guy, so we're gonna talk about like on specifically online relationship advice, right? Because it's not like relationship advice just tumbled out of the sky, but with social media and the accessibility of social media, everybody can get on YouTube or on Instagram or whatever and start telling you what you need to do to get a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever, and to keep them
Influencers.
happy, influencers, the whole nine. So, you know, one of I mean, there's a lot of toxic relationship advice out there, which we'll get into. But when I looked up the number one, and this might have changed since then, but the number one relationship advice person on YouTube is this guy Tripp, and it's interesting because a lot of relationship advice, especially when you talk about like hetero relationships, like cis hetero relationships, are very like talk about masculine energy, feminine energy. This is what men like. This is what women like. Women think like this. You gotta do this if you want to deal with women. You just gotta accept that they're like that. Blah blah blah. And this guy, there was a little bit of that going on, but it wasn't like. I mean, I guess it's always a little bit problematic, but it was less problematic than I'm used to than some of the other examples that But one of the things that struck me was that a lot of the things that he described, like obviously, he's an influencer, he's on YouTube, he has a particular like audience that he needs to target, but he's very much like talking to men, right? He's talking to dudes, probably kind of like late 20s, early 30s type, and the advice that he was giving them was just people advice. I mean, it was just people advice. It wasn't like, as a dude, like, I know that it's hard to share your feelings, but like, try to do it anyway. It was like, yeah, just like be yourself. Like, show her that you're a cool dude. Don't go into a relationship too soon. Like, don't give too many gifts. Otherwise, she'll start to wonder if, you're insecure. And I was like, all these things are like, these are all on point, and I was like, but then I was like, oh, this is nice, whatever. But then it struck me that I was like, if this person were to make videos that were geared toward women, would he use that same advice? Or would he
Probably
be
not.
like, you know what I mean? Like, would he be like, oh, just be yourself, blah, blah. Or would he be like, well, guys, XYZ. And, as girls, XYZ. Or would he try to soften it? Or would he try to, whatever. And I'm just like, even the nicest people just don't think that women are people. Even then,
And
even I
yeah,
just did it just now. I said people instead of dudes. See? And it's like,
yeah, it's interesting because I always feel like, actually this is kind of related to um, what we were talking about earlier, actually, because I was gonna bring up when we were talking about, sexual assault and the accused always being kind of given a lot of grace, whereas like, women who come forward aren't, and it's like we have these sexual double standards that still exist, and it's almost like those just go unquestioned, and that includes like dating advice and things like that, right? So, the underlying assumptions that like women are this way and we're going to paint them all with this like broad brush is so weird and so common. And I'm not surprised that it exists in the world of online dating advice as well. And I'm fully not surprised that a lot of that advice will probably center around like, yeah, just unquestioned assumptions about gender.
yeah. Well, it's also like, so you're gonna have unquestioned assumptions about certain things, but you're also gonna equate just like general human qualities, general human advice with just like men being neutral, right? It's like
Mm.
the neutrality of masculinity, basically making masculinity a standard, making
Yeah,
manhood a standard, making guys a standard,
the
right?
default.
The default. And it's like, okay, so at what point do we start to have this conversation around like people being able to relate to each other past each other's genders?
Mm, yeah,
Genders or lack thereof, right?
yeah.
Like I remember this is a bit of a tangent, but I think I brought this up last time because I'm very obsessive with this situation. But so Megan Thee Stallion, very popular rapper, was shot in the feet by Tory Lanez. And I remember having a conversation with the dude that I was seeing at the time. And I was like very upset about it, like really upset. And I remember I was talking to him and I got like visibly upset because I was just like, I just don't get what it's going to take. I got kind of like in a mode. And he said something to me along the lines of like, yeah, like he was like trying to be nice and empathetic. But he said something to me along the lines of like, yeah, like I get it. Like, I just see, I understand why you relate to the situation, because yeah, like I get, with women and, like as a woman, like, blah, blah. And I was like, why don't you relate to this situation? If you got shot in the feet, would you want everybody to think that you were lying? Like if you got shot in the feet, if somebody was like constantly on songs like talking about people that like were from where you're from or had your profession, for example, like just have had identifying characteristic like that he literally was consistently dissing and dissing and dissing and then shot you in the feet and nobody believed you even though it's clear from his art that he clearly has a bias against people of your ilk. Would that not upset you? Like, I don't understand why it's like we see that people are going through things and we can't relate to it because they have a specific gender.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, no, I do. I like it. It makes me think of like someone did a study a while ago, show like just thinking about how many male protagonists were in like kids' books and kids' movies, and it was like something like 70% of the protagonists were male. I think it's changing now, like a little bit. You see lots of Disney films coming out with like female protagonists, but it's just like I think as like young women, we're definitely raised to identify with men and to empathize with men and to identify with their struggles and to look up to them. And like, I grew up reading Harry Potter, fucking love that stuff, love it. And I identified with the characters, all of them, male and female, but Harry's the protagonist, so you kind of see the world through his eyes. If we did that more with boys, would they end up treating us more like humans over time? Like, right? Because they would understand that we are and we like think the same way and have like thoughts of our own and like, are the protagonists in our own stories. Like, I don't know. Yeah, that's definitely been said to be like, one of those ways in which like representation does very much matter, because if you don't ever see a person that doesn't look like you as a main character, as a person that you're supposed to empathize with, that you're supposed to be on a journey with, can you fully understand, like, really, you're not being taught that, I guess, essentially, like, to empathize. So that's just like one of those ways, hopefully we can like start changing that, because it's weird. And like asking men in your life, like, who are your role models, see if they name any women.
Oh my
Like,
God.
do they? I hope so, but that might not
Yeah.
be their first instinct, right? um,
Yeah. I doubt it. I mean, I feel like, there's been like a lot of conversation around, I mean, and I think like, I feel like we touched on this a little bit of masculinity, like around like, women led movies, right? It's like, there's this assumption that women led movies are just not going to be as good. Just like there's an assumption that women like companies are not going to be as good. And
Right.
it's like when you actually look under the hood, they're just as good. The quality
Right.
is just as good. The characters are just as believable. The actors are fucking doing their thing. The special effects are just as dope. But it's just like, oh, ain't
Yeah.
nobody trying to see all that estrogen.
Right.
No one. I was watching a TV show recently that was like, it was like a home decor thing. This is kind of dumb, but it was a home decor thing, and the guy, and it probably came out in like 2017, and he's getting his house remodeled, and he's like, oh, I hope that she can remodel it and that there won't be too much estrogen in this house. And that made the final cut of the TV show. And I was like,
Okay.
well, you asshole, if you knew how to decorate your house your fucking self, she wouldn't even have to be here. So like, I don't even know, why are we talking about estrogen? Maybe you need, I mean, not that I'm advocating for anybody talking about needing estrogen or not in that context, but like, why is that a diss? Like, why is that like and if you had estrogen in your life, which you clearly needed something that was not what you currently had, like, why is that, a diss? And most importantly, why are we, what, like, why are we talking about, like, why are we talking about this?
And why are we dissing someone who's trying to help you,
why are
man?
you just, like, why? Genevieve
Yeah.
is so great.
Honestly, so weird. I actually, on that note, and sorry, we'll stop. I'll stop talking about design because we're supposed to be talking about dating advice, but
No, it was me. It was me.
it's okay. It's a good thread. Bobby Burke from Queer Eye, he wrote an article recently that was just about degendering design, and he was just like, "Can we stop referring to like rooms as masculine and feminine? Stop it."
Oh,
And I was just like, "Yes, this is so true,"
yeah.
because you're really limiting what you can do in a space when you're just like, "No, this is masculine, this is feminine." It's like, "Oh, stop it! Just stop it! Just whatever." Like textures have no gender, colors have no gender. Like, stop it! So it was a great article.
And I hope we succeed.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
yeah.
Another thing, actually, coming back to the dating thing, another like, yeah, it's just the narrative that's still prevalent. I think you're totally right when you're pointing it out. Like the women are from Mars, or sorry, women are from Venus, men are from Mars, like thing. This like they're so different is super prevalent still. And another solution that definitely comes to mind when I think about that is just like encouraging, really, really encouraging, like kids when they're kids to be friends with people cross gender, and like stopping the nonsense of us separating them. Like even like we separate them playing sports when they're like really young. It's like they all clearly suck, so like don't separate them. Like they're all terrible, so it makes no difference. Like stop it, and like just encouraging those cross gender friendships. So again, they like learn that empathy. They learn that okay, we're not very different. We have a lot of similarities. Like that would be a game changer, because then it wouldn't be like, oh my god, I've never talked to a girl before in my life. When this boy's like 13, he'll be like, I have good friends so and so, other good friends. Like I have talked to women before, so I'm not like tripping over myself thinking like, oh my god, she's a different species and I have no idea what to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's how you end up with having a vice president like Mike Pence or like Amy Coney Barrett, who literally is living real life Handmaid's Tale in our fucking Supreme Court. You know what I mean? Like, that's how that happens, because you have people that are like, no, but they're right. Men and women can't be friends. No, I cannot be in a room alone with somebody who is not my wife. Are you kidding me? Who knows what I might do?
So
you know
bizarre.
what I mean? Like, I can't coexist with these people, so it's like, and I feel like that fundamental thinking informs so much of the way that we understand and deal with dating. And I think that people piggyback on that. I mean, there are a lot of like really, really, really just aggressively misogynistic like relationship columns or relationship pages out there.
Like pickup artists, right? Like
Yeah.
Artists.
Yeah. Right, where you're like, if a woman has a child, she becomes undesirable. But if a guy has a child, well, guys spread their seeds. So, hey, what you gonna do?
Keep those double standards alive. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, but then there's also like a thread, I think Herman was bringing up, the unhelpful feminist advice. What did you think about that?
I read through that little, like, I didn't read through all the comments on the Reddit thing, but I read through the like initial Reddit post that he had linked. And you know, I think it's really funny because I sort of think about this the way I think about therapy. Like when you go, sometimes when people go to therapy, they're hoping that someone's going to tell them what to do. But that's not what therapy is, right? It's like literally
It's not.
they're yeah, no, they're gonna be asking you questions and trying to like sort of help you make your own decisions and stuff, but they're not gonna tell you what to do, right?
Yeah.
If they do, they're a very bad therapist. That's like legitimately like a big no-no. Like you're not there to give advice. You're honestly not. And so like I kind of feel like when people go looking for dating advice, they get disappointed when they're not told what to do. And the thing is, I don't think you can be told what to do because like, if we want to treat people like humans, like we've been saying, like how important it is, especially, treat women like humans, you're going to have to understand that they're all different.
Yeah.
Like, there isn't going to be a silver bullet that's going to be like dating advice that works every time. Like, it's just not. Like, that's not reality at all. And so
And
I
that men are
guess,
different. Like men are
yeah,
not all the same. Like why would we? Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
exactly. No. And you're so right. Like that is what it is. And so I guess like when I'm like, oh, there's no good feminist dating advice, I'm like, good, because I don't think we should be telling people what to do. I think that people are going to have to take some basic principles about how to treat each other well, and try to apply those and try to take care of themselves and feel good about who they are, and that the rest is like, I don't know, not that hard. I don't know. But then again, I always feel bad talking about dating because, like I said earlier when we opened this episode, I honestly, it's not something I have to think about all that much because I've been like in a long-term relationship for a long time. So I just like I don't have to think about it that much. So I hate when I'm like, there's no problems, and people are like, yeah, easier for you to say, and I'm like, yeah, that's fair. So like, ugh. But I don't know. Your thoughts? Sorry.
Well, I mean, I am somebody actually who is currently single, so I feel, I think that, yeah, I mean, to your point, you can't tell people what to do, and I feel that way because we often, I mean, I think that we have kind of like a fundamental kind of human way that we deal with things, right? We have like human emotions, we have triggers, we have this, blah blah blah. So in that way, we're really similar, but we're just not the same. You know what I mean? Like there are so many different types of people out there. There's so many different things that makes people happy, so many different things that make people feel bad, feel good. Like it's just to be able to just say like, oh, this will work. Don't buy gifts in the first 6 months because XYZ. Don't do this because you don't know if that's going to work for that person. You have no idea. You don't know what's going on. The reason why we have so much beauty and creativity in this world outside of just like nature and how awesome just like the ocean and like green trees are is because people are different. You know what I mean? Like all this art that's out here, all of these like different things that we consume and use every day that we love are all diverse because we have different people in the world. So to say that we're going to have this like column, granted, I mean, when you go look at these people, it's like millions and millions and millions of views. You know, I mean, I feel like
People want to be told what to do.
people want, and hey, I'm not gonna lie, me too. I'm not gonna lie to you, me too. And I, I'm learning to let that go. It's a process, but I'm learning to let it go. And it's like, yeah, I mean, yeah. It's there's too much actual diversity in the world, not
Yeah,
just for representation's sake, but actual diversity in the world for us to be able to like all have these like one size fits all things. So,
totally.
yeah.
And I know Herman's going to probably listen to this and be like, what a cop-out answer, Veronica. Best
Oh.
advice is no advice. but my bad. But, like, truthfully, like, also, I mean, to go back to the Reddit thread, like, I do empathize, again, with guys who are like, I'm being told, by, feminists to kind of shirk, like, these patriarchal standards to try and get away from them. But then, like, there's a bunch of people out there in the world that are still not doing that.
Yeah.
So am I like, I don't know, like ruining my chances? I guess I don't know what is a better way to say that, but like that, this guy feels like if I'm ignoring all these like patriarchal dating things, like being the initiator, or buying the stuff or offering to do those things are still kind of ingrained. Am I just like ruining my chances? And I'm like, this is an interesting thing to think about, because I'm almost
Yeah.
like, I wouldn't want to date somebody who didn't have those same values. So I don't know. Like, I don't know what the answer is.
And that's the thing. It's like, I feel like when you're in a partner with someone, you have to like see what your partner wants. You can't be like, oh, like I feel like, so there's a couple of things I want to say about this because it's like one of the things that you're pointing to, which is like so brilliant, is how much people, and I hate to say this. I mean, I don't hate to say it. This is how I feel. Like a lot of women will say, I just want you to be honest with me, open up, show your true feelings. Like, why don't you talk to me? Like, I just want to know. And then dude starts opening up. And she doesn't know what to do with all these feelings. She's like, oh shit. He started actually telling me what was going on. And I'm just kind of like, oh my God, why are you so feely? Why are you so emotional? Why do you have, like, it's so weird. So it's like a thing where it sounds good, right? And it's like the thing you should want because, we're like moving into, well, we're not really moving into it. Cosby just got out. But we're trying to move into like equity and equality and all of these things and stuff. And so it sounds like a good idea to like say that. But a lot of women don't actually feel it. A lot of women are not down to let men live. A lot of women are very uncomfortable with men being super free and super like emotional and sensitive with their feelings. And it's like, one, that's fucked up. I mean, I know that that's a judgmental thing to say, but that's fucked up. It's like, if you're allowed to say your feelings, then your partner should be allowed to share their feelings too. Two, if you don't want to be with somebody who shares their feelings, then don't be with somebody who shares their feelings. There are plenty of guys out there who don't ever talk about their feelings. Just go grab a stoic dude who's comfortable in his stoicism and call it a day. Yep. You know what I'm saying? So that's the thing. I'm like, I feel like that's something that I think, honestly, and this thread like about masculinity and relationships and stuff, it's like, I do feel like we don't talk a lot about it. I mean, I feel like we're starting to talk more about it because I feel like a lot of that toxicity is coming out where, like there was like a bunch of shit. Like there are a lot of people who are coming out saying like wild things like, oh, if a dude orders like dessert, he's gay or whatever. Like things like, yeah. Lots of stuff like that going on. I know.
So strange.
So strange.
That it also reminds me of, in The Will to Change, Bell Hooks has like a piece where she's talking about women and patriarchy, and one of the things she says is that like when you're in a relationship, like I guess we'll say a straight relationship or whatever, hetero relationship with man and woman, if he is expressing like negative feelings and it has to do with her, like so many women are like so defensive and reactive to that because it's like an admonition of failure under patriarchy to not be like the perfect, I am making this man happy, like this is my job to be able to like only create positive emotions for this person, and like whatever, I can't handle his like negative emotions or like his anger, or like if he's like upset with me, like I can't handle that. And I thought that was really interesting, and I don't know, what do you think about that?
I mean, I think that there's like a lot of conversation around like how woman is supposed to be a man's piece, PEACE piece. And I'm like, and I'm like, I mean, as like a, new agey person, I'm like, peace comes from within. So it's like, you can't be someone's peace. Like when you go on vacation, what do? Do they not have peace anymore? Like, I don't understand that. So I get that because I think, well, actually, funny you mentioned Bell Hooks. I'm currently reading Bell Hooks' book. It's called, oh shit. I thought it was called something else.
Same. I love that you're reading it. That's so good.
So funny. So it says Men, Masculinity, and Love, and in my mind it was just called Men, Masculinity, and Love. Just kidding. It's called The Will to Change. Perfect. So yeah. So in the beginning of I'm at the very beginning of the book. So in the beginning of the book, she's like talking about how I think previous to that, how women form an identity around that. Or I guess, I mean, she says women, but I want to extend that to people who are in relationships with masculine people, because that performance thrives in them as well, right? So, people who are in relationships with masculine people who kind of, who perform masculinity in that way, over time can develop this like this identity and become secure in an identity of lack of love, lack of intimacy, of lack of community, of lack of connection. Sorry, that's what I mean. And I think it's true. Long way of saying I agree. I mean, I've seen it myself very personally with people that I know. And it's very sobering because there's a lot of pain there, and it's like when you like I feel for not only the person who is passively kind of creating an identity around the pain of being with somebody who's like just having like kind of like lack of loving connection, but also being the active person, right? Like if you are the stoic kind of emotionless person who is only able to express through anger or not express at all, like there's an identity that forms around that pain, that forms around that, which is what we talk about consistently through this conversation around masculinity. So I feel for that. Like that is devastating. It really
Yep.
is. That's not in any relationship advice column that I've ever seen, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. We will be talking about this too. You just made me think of it at the end of, or yeah, end of the month ish. July 22nd is the next Gem and Circle event, and we're talking about masculinity and self improvement.
Ooh.
And yeah, like big topic because it's pretty broad. But like the thing that it made me think of is like, yeah, like there's the advice around self improvement for men is like wealth, getting women, and like fitness. Like that's it. And so like the dating advice is typically around like the pursuit and never really about like what you actually do in relationship. In my like in
Yeah.
my like very limited scan of what
Yep.
I've seen so far, it's like
Yep.
how to get the girl and not like how to keep the relationship like at all, it seems. So I think
Yeah.
that's really interesting.
Yeah, I second that. And to piggyback on that, there's actually also a lot of like how to get her back,
Oh,
but like
interesting.
not like, oh, I need to get her back because I fucked up, or I need to get him back or them back because I fucked up, but not actually being like, okay, let's take a step back and understand if this is purely a redemptive act or you're actually trying to be back with this person. Like, are you just trying to,
Heal your ego.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, kill your ego. Perfect way to put it. So, that's also not been in any relationship advice column that I've ever seen. Not that I've been perusing a lot of them, but important threads to pay attention to here.
Yeah. And
So,
there'll be a lot more I think that'll come out. I hope that I'll be able to find for like this discussion on the 22nd because yeah, it's a whole it's pretty new territory to me for me to look at what is the relationship advice that men are being told because I'm not gonna lie, I've never opened up like a GQ like I've never like really read the advice that's out there, so it will be interesting for me to like look and see like what is it really and has it changed over time.
I mean, do you really want to? I I don't know. It's pretty because I mean some of it is like very I mean like seemingly innocuous, right? The trips of the world who are just like be yourself, just blah blah blah, like sensible ish advice, and then a lot of it is just like if you want a woman to like you, you gotta disrespect her, and then she'll like you. If you want a dude to like you, you have to not sleep with him for 90 days, make him take you out to dinner, and that. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, so I don't really know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. I guess we'll see if any of it's upgraded from those very old tropes, and maybe more of it is moving towards these like trip versions of
Yeah.
kind of more generic advice. It'll be interesting to look at, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really curious what like male listeners might want to chime in when they hear this to
Mm-hmm.
be able to tell us like what is it actually like, guys? Because I'm going like purely based on like just the little things here and there that I've kind of seen, but I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of communication is key, which as far as like if there was ever any like blanket advice that you would give for any type of relationship, dating or otherwise, I feel like communication would probably be pretty good. I'm not saying I'm good at it, but I'm saying that's something that would be really good to have, you
Yeah,
know. So
yeah,
yeah.
that is true. Yeah, do do we have more advice to give, or do we have any advice to give, or should we move to chat about our Gen Z people, or yeah.
Yes, yes. I feel like maybe we can go there. Yeah,
Okay.
I feel like yeah, that'll be
So
a
I'm like,
nice light topic to
yeah,
like.
I'm like, I have no advice.
Well, I mean, I think you already had the advice, right? Which is like, there's no blanket advice that you can give someone. You
That's
know,
true.
yeah.
Yeah.
Be with a partner that works for you. Like things don't work for other like things that work for you don't necessarily work for other people. That's my
Mm-hmm.
advice. Find
Yeah,
out what works for you. Don't listen to everybody. They don't know.
totally.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And if you're like, oh man, being progressive means I don't get dates, I'm like, okay, like find progressive people. Like I don't know what you, like I don't know, just like it can't. Yeah, I don't know. There's interesting things floating out there, but I don't think we can dissect absolutely all of the myths or all of the advice. But yeah, we can definitely talk about Gen Z because I think they're doing some things differently, and I'm
That's so great.
very interested in this young generation for sure.
Yeah, I mean, actually, this was something that Danny had brought up. So I hope that you're well, Danny. About just like how, just in general, just being a little bit more with it than we are. I mean, I don't know. Do you identify as a millennial? I
Yeah,
do. Okay.
yeah.
And I feel like I mean, this is actually something that I meant to bring up around. I mean, I guess we talked a little bit how generationally and stuff with like Felicia Rashad and the crew, and then kind of like this relationship advice. A lot of it has been, kind of millennials, like people like in their 30s or whatever, talking shit and older.
Yeah,
And I feel like when we get to Gen Z, there's a lot of like, just let me live, just let me be, this person's like, I don't actually care what this person's like, I mean, I care in terms of like respect what their gender pronouns are, but I don't like care because it means anything to me personally. Like I'm literally just out to just like respect this person and tell me, and like that's it. I don't really need to like have all these over explanations about who they are for them to like justify their existence and their identity to me.
totally.
you
Yeah,
know
definitely cool to see, like, especially in our work with boys, how, like, they come to us already knowing, like, gender identity, gender expression, like, all those terms, and, like, being like, yep, like, we get it. And I'm like, whoa, like, this is great. Like, that would not have been really talked about like, I don't know if I can't speak for your experience, but definitely not when I was younger. Like,
Oh my
that
god,
wasn't,
no.
not a thing.
No, it wasn't. And I mean, I think like so the latest Modern Manhood episode talks a lot about color and like implicit biases and things like that. And I feel like Gen Z, and I don't know what generation comes after that, but like yeah, I feel like they have an opportunity to actually move beyond that. Like they have an opportunity to perhaps like grow up in rooms that aren't pink because they were born with a vagina. That they can come and like grow up in the room that's just like beige or yellow or gray, and have these like and basically not have all of these different signifiers that we have,
Yeah,
right? Where immediately we're just gendered. Everything that we see is gendered, which is really really nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it is cool, like the surveys that have been done that show things like, yeah, this one said, new survey by Gallup finds unprecedented numbers of young people identify as LGBTQ plus, and they said it was something like 15% in a random sampling they did of Gen Z respondents said they were queer or trans, and I was like, whoa, and definitely like a cool thing because you're like that just means like people are safer to come out, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's like the big thing I think from
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, like, the fact that people are like growing up knowing what the gender spectrum is. Like, I remember the time and date, not day, maybe, but I remember what I was doing when I heard what a gender spectrum was. I was at the gym, just like bullshitting on my phone, waiting for a machine, and just found this term. I don't know. I was listening to a podcast and looked it up, and I was probably like maybe like 31 when I found out what a gender spectrum was, and it's like I think about just being so deep in this like and like in caring so much about gender equity and caring so much about equity in general. Doesn't I mean, and just like just knowing how long it took me to get to those notions, and knowing that there are people who are like 13, 14, 15 who are like just talking to their parents and schooling parents on like this is actually you're so out of date. You're completely obsolete. Like, this is not what we do anymore. Like, that's so refreshing, you know?
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so cool. I'm like, you get y'all are like leaps and bounds ahead of where we were at, you know, like so far ahead of where we were at. Like my sister is 16. I have a younger sister, so she's a Gen Z, and she tells me like it is not cool to be homophobic at school. Like that is a big no no.
Oh,
And I'm
that's
like,
so awesome.
that's amazing because I was like, in my school it was totally normal. Like so many people were homophobic, right? It was completely normalized. Like
Yeah.
that's what it was, and I got weird looks all the time for yelling at people for being homophobic, and like I I got in big trouble in French class for like standing up and yelling at a kid because he was making fun of this other guy for being gay, and I was like, you need to fuck off. Like got kicked out of French class, but like
Well
what
done, Veronica.
thank
So
you
what?
thank
What's a
you.
good way to get kicked out? It's a good way to get kicked out.
Yeah, I agree. I'm like no regrets for all the times that I was disruptive because I was like, this is totally fucking worth it. Like I couldn't believe the way some kids were treated. Like it was
Yeah.
unbelievable. But like it was so normal. It was so normal. Like so often it was just like not talked about, and like yeah, I'm glad it's trending in a different direction. I'm glad it's like now it's like not cool, right? It's not socially acceptable. It's not socially normal to be homophobic. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. So it's great, right? Because I feel like there's like a lot of understanding of gender fluidity. There's
Yeah.
like a lot of understanding of sexuality fluidity, which is great. The thing about Gen Z that I'm still scared for them about is like masculinity and patriarchy masculinity with a K and patriarchy in work culture. Because these kids work. I mean, they work. They work 18-hour days, like 21-year-olds and stuff. Like 18-hour days, 20. I mean, and they're, they have the benefit of having grown up in this era, right? That has like all of these different, like technological gadgets that are, make work and make skill accessible at unprecedented levels. So to that degree, like I appreciate the agency that they have, and I'm happy for them for that. There is that aspect of like overwork, I think, that is being impressed upon Gen Z that is, while, they're fluid there, I don't know if their attitudes towards work are fluid.
That's a
And
good point.
yeah, and I get it. I get why. And all I'm saying that to say, and I'm saying this to myself as much as I'm like, just chopping it up with you right now, is just like, I'm still looking out for Gen Z. I'm still like, yo, don't fall into the trap. Do not fall into the trap, because I feel like gender roles on some level, I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg, like if it's like capitalism, then like, yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like capitalism, then gender roles, the gender roles, then capitalism. But I'm like, yo, if you fall into the trap of capitalism, you're going to then start looking at like tendencies. You're going to be like, oh, well, people who look like this do that. People who look like that do this. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm reaching, but perhaps.
I think yeah, no, it's a good point and good to think about too. With like the working more and stuff is like similar to like us with boomers, how like we've inherited like jobs with like less pay and less benefits and longer hours. It's like very similar. I worry about Gen Z, kind of same thing, or even like it's going to be the gig economy entirely for them, right? Like just make it on your own, hustle, be an influencer, have a side hustle, do whatever. Like they're going to have these weird patchworks of like never actually having job security. Is kind of what I predict for them. And then of course their impending climate crisis and things like that, which as you can see me like sweat. I'm like, like it's actually like we're in the middle of our second heat wave in 2 weeks or whatever. So we're just, just enjoying the extreme weather that climate change is bringing my province. And but yeah, they're gonna have a lot to deal with, and they're not exactly inheriting a great situation from us.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like, in line with that, the CEO culture of it all, like, then is it like a thing where you aspire to that as a Gen Z, comer upper, whatever that term is, like, are you then just like finding your truth as like an artist or maybe not even necessarily an artist, but whatever it is that you do, you just finding your truth in that? Or do we still get this like stratification that's along the lines of you've got, you know, disciplines that people like that, you know, masculinity says are better, hard sciences, whatever it is, and then you've got like the artist folks who are just gonna be doing gigs. I mean, they're just gonna be doing gigs. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it'll be weird to see too, because like
Mm-hmm.
even now the trends are showing like more women are getting higher, like getting higher education degrees, like more, you know, 4 year degrees, more master's degrees, more doctorates, like literally like at almost, well actually I'm not sure about doctorates, but like at those first two levels
Mm-hmm.
for sure more women.
Yeah.
And it's been trending that way for a little while, and I'm wondering if it's going to keep trending that way for Gen Z and what that will change for them. And then with a lot of these male dominated industries that we've relied on for, like men have relied on for a long time to earn money without necessarily having like higher education, that are going to be disappearing because of automation. You're like, is this
Mm-hmm.
going to, like, is the end result going to be like a totally interesting shift where we see all these men going into what was previously female dominated professions like care work, because it's going to be like the hardest to automate. I don't know. And how will that change the world? I'm like, whoa, we'll see.
You know, actually, I was like, no, but I feel like maybe Gen Z will be there because they're more fluid in that way.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Yeah, that's so interesting.
And because that might be the only place they can work.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, for a lot of like older men, like a lot of boomers, that is the only place that can work. And still they're like, I ain't doing that. That's for girls.
Yeah.
So, you know, but yeah, Gen Z being more fluid. Oh,
Might
yeah.
challenge it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We might see a
Yeah.
lot more male daycare workers, elder care, like home workers, teachers, those things that are going to be, you know, the last things we'd ever really automate. I think like the care work is hard to give to robots.
Oh my God.
So, but the other things that they've been used to doing for a long time, like truck driving and stuff like that, like it's probably going to be automated sooner than later, you know. So
Oh my God.
we'll see.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
Bezos has anything to say about it. Or no, not him. The other one.
Elon
Elon
Musk.
Musk. Yeah.
I hate them all.
I know. I know.
Hate them all equally.
The other person that's trying to go to some other planet while we're over here just trying to stay cool and not have shit, not have the ocean burn. Did you see that?
Yeah. I'm horrified. I am also very heartened to know that life in space is horrible right now, and it will be horrible for the rest of our lifetime. I saw a really funny tweet series about this, and I was just like, this makes me happy. Even if these guys do manage to get to space, it's awful. Life in space is terrible. So enjoy that.
Damn. Hey, you know, hey, you gotta have some silver lining somewhere. Then I have to come back to Earth and be like, all right, I guess we'll just give $1 billion to like make things a little bit better for people.
Right?
We still have 145 left, but you know, hey, that's cool.
Now that my bone density has turned to mush, I guess I could do something for the rest of humanity. Now that I ate only mush in a horrible, like, vacuous space. Anyway, I hope they go to space and they do not enjoy it. That's my hope.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're finding out. That's happening this month, right? Isn't that happening like in a week?
I don't even know. I didn't think it was going to be that soon.
Yeah, dude. Yeah,
Wow,
one
though.
of them is trying to beat the other. I mean, I guess this is actually a perfect. I was gonna say we're getting off topic, but are we? Isn't this just another?
Definitely, like, pardon my language, but it's definitely a dick measuring contest. So, nope, it's on point.
Like at the highest levels, I'm like, call me. I mean, the highest levels of capitalism. I don't know about the highest levels of like whatever, but anyway. Well, cool. And ending notes with Amazon and Tesla. I stopped shopping at Amazon actually a long time ago. Although that might restart depending on where I move because I might be moving soon. But anyways,
Good for you.
yeah. Well, we'll see.
Don't give him the money.
I know, right? I'm like, no more Whole Foods. I don't care if Jenny's ice cream is there. But anyway, is there anything, any last wisdoms that you wanna impart upon us? Oh,
Well,
did we have something else up?
oh my gosh. I think we might have actually, missed something that we should talk about next time.
Okay.
Okay. Because I feel like we've already talked for a long time.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah,
But
I thought it was a little bit
definitely.
misplaced too. I bet you guys are wondering what we're talking about. No.
Have to tune in next time.
Exactly.
But yes, we have so much to cover, and yes, in such a short time, it always feels like. But yeah, I guess definitely for folks who may be listening. Oh gosh, I hope tomorrow. I just want to let people know book club registration closes tomorrow. So hopefully folks who are interested in that have already signed up, and anyone who's got any last minute like, oh, I'm interested, I hope that they will sign up. Book club is our initiative for male leaders, particularly in male-dominated industries, who want to move the needle on gender and equality in their workplaces, but maybe they don't know necessarily where to start or what to do. But it's definitely an empathy-building, perspective-taking kind of exercise to read a book by an author who has a perspective totally different from your own, to kind of learn something new about the world. So yeah, that closes tomorrow. Otherwise, I guess I already mentioned on July 22nd is the next Next Gen Men Circle event, which is going to be dope on masculinity and self-improvement, and we're gonna have lots to say about the whole industry around self-improvement, around the ways it kind of inflames insecurities under patriarchy, about maybe how it could be better. I don't know. We'll see. So that will be the next thing. And then when can folks expect Masculinity Podcast to be dropping new episodes?
It'll be dropping at the end of the summer.
Yay! So exciting.
So we're excited to come back. I think we're going to have a conversation around family and how gender, like notions of gender pop up there, and like how it affects our relationships, like not just, with our like husbands and wives and partners, but also just like our brothers, our siblings, our aunts, just like taking a look at family or lack thereof, and how that's impacted the way that we feel about ourselves and the way that we feel about each other.
That sounds amazing. I can't wait to listen.
Yeah. Can't wait to finish. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in.
Yes.
That was really fun. I mean, I feel like it was like fun. It was like, wow. But it was fun. It was like, you're like, oh, Cosby. Wow. But, also I'm glad we talked about it.
Yeah, I feel like it's always fun talking to you, even if the topics are dark. I think we can, that's probably a good life skill that's got us thus far, to be able to laugh at things that are sad. And still be like, we still have hope somehow, guys. I mean, everyone, we still have hope.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you're a hopeful person, so I feel like talking to you makes me more hopeful. A lot of times I'm like, let's just burn it. Let's just burn it and start over. Let's burn it and start with a new one. Let's just grab a planet on Amazon and start a new one. That was a bad joke. Anyway, but other plugs that we want to put in, I mean, I guess, I don't know if you already gave the URL for the membership, but you're talking about all these amazing events. And if you guys want to join, it's going to be nextgenmen.ca/join to be a member, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Cool.
Totally. And then folks can join us on the forum too, where they could talk to both of us and everyone else about everything we talk about and more. Because, yeah, we want folks to contribute to the conversation. It's much better when there's lots of voices there to come bring their thoughts and opinions. And if you find relationship advice stuff and you're like, wow, what is this? We want to talk about it there too. We obviously, these are topics that are interesting to us. So let's keep the conversation going there for sure.
Awesome. Cool. Well, last but not least, we want to shout out our Next Gen Men team, the ones who are not here today. I hope you guys are well. Danny, Herman, Ramoy, Jake, and the rest of the crew. Hope y'all are well. And, Herman, thanks for having us on this platform. Very cool.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. Well, I guess that wraps it up. And we thank you for coming.
Yeah, I guess so. I'll see you next time.
See you next time. Ciao, everybody.
Bye. I know, same. It's like so 30 degrees in my house, so yep.
Bye.
See you later.